Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Corps Studio. Welcome to the show. So I've got a very exciting deck tech for you today. And as a quick reminder, my deck techs are very budget friendly. Every single card in them being less than $1, except sometimes the Commander. Regardless, the 99 is always going to be budget friendly. And in this case, the Commander itself is, well, $64. With the Dragon, that is its cheapest printing. Technically, I think the oversized version of it's like 20 bucks or so you could probably get away with that. Or, you could just maybe, proxy it or, trade with a friend essentially for it. Regardless, this is a very, very, very budget-friendly 99 again. And if you are interested in the deck list for this Commander, make sure you check out my deck list link in the description below. And yeah, I think the entire deck list itself is around $93, including the Commander, according to Moxfield. I'll make sure I put the actual price of the deck right over here-ish somewhere when I edit it. Do that, future Mitch. Thank you. Also, I mean, if you took out the Commander from that, that'd be, what, $30 for the rest of the card? So yeah, if you already have the Dragon, there you go. Now, the Dragon itself, of course, is a 10/10 Dragon Avatar that costs 4 Wooburg, and it has Eminence, which means that, well, even if it's in your command zone, you're going to be getting a huge benefit. Because if it's in your command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That is a massive cost reduction for all your dragon spells, and believe me, you're going to have an absurd amount of dragon spells in this deck. On top of that, this does have flying. Did I not mention that so far? Yeah, a 10/10 flyer. Gross. Whenever one or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, but a permanent card from your hand on the battlefield. Gross. Double gross. Basically, hey, all those giant dragons in your deck? Well, let's swing with some giant dragons in play and hit your opponents for a lot, and also draw a ton of cards and cheat out probably another giant dragon. So yeah, this Commander is not only a huge threat, it also can give you a massive amount of cost reduction, and also, yeah, just basically be a giant draw engine for you. And, a way to cheat things into play too. So the Dragon has a lot going for it. Yeah, the goal of this deck is just get dragons out, smash our opponents. We can take them out with, dragon damage or commander damage as well. Dragon damage is definitely a thing, right? But yeah, commander damage as well. Just a 2-shot KO from our commander. And of course, there are certain ways to turn that into maybe, or I said a 2-shot KO. It's a 3-shot KO. Certain ways to turn it into a 2-shot KO and maybe even a 1-shot KO if we get the right cards out. And there's a couple ones that can really help out with that. Now, with all that said, on these episodes, I'm going to take you through different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's move on to our first tactic, which is going to be our ramp package, our standard ramp package. And of course, first up, there is Wayfarer's Bauble, an incredible card. One that I absolutely love. Yeah, pay 2 taps, sacrifice, go get a basic land to play tapped. Great way to fix your mana early because, again, any kind of mana can get this out. And then, yeah, any mana can actually activate it as well. So even if you don't have a green source, great, you can still ramp early. Now, if you do have a green source, of course, rampant growth is a great one. 2 mana, go get a basic and play tap. What's not to love about that? Edge of Autumn, basically the exact same thing the vast majority of the time. Yeah, essentially you're going to be getting, your basic out into play tapped if you got 4 fewer lands. If you do have more than that, well, you can cycle it away by sacrificing a land. Sakura Tribe Elder. Steve. Oh, I'm so sorry, Steve. We're going to get you into play. We're going to sacrifice you. You're going to go bye-bye. But you will get us that base land. You're basically a rampant growth on a body. Next up, Cultivate. Go get 2 basics. 1 goes into play tapped. 1 goes into our hand. Great for mana fixing. Great for ensuring that we're going to hit our land drop. Speaking of which, Grow from the Ashes. Hey, pay 2 to kick this. If you do, get 2 basics into play untapped. If you only, don't kick it, just 1. Still a great way to just kind of, chain from one spell to another, essentially, by getting those lands into play and be able to cast something else when you're set up properly. Moving on, we've got Harrow. Harrow is a great card as well. Sacrifice 1 land, go get 2 basics into play untapped. Yeah, great for mana fixing as well. Search for Tomorrow, another great turn 1 play, just like our Wayfarer's Bauble. Works just a bit differently, though. Suspend 2 for a green. Go get a basic into play untapped. Again, being able to use that mana right away can be huge. Migration Path. Go get 2 basics into play, tap for 4 mana. A great rate there. Or if we don't need that, well, we can cycle it away for 2 mana, and that can come in huge. Now, speaking of coming in huge, let's move on to our next tactic, which I'm calling Dragon Ramp. Now, that other stuff was, as regular ramp. This is Dragon Ramp because specifically, well, we've got Dragon Lord's Servant. An incredible card in this deck. Dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Our commander, again, already gives cost reduction for our dragons. This just stacks that on top of it even more. So now our dragons cost 2 less to cast. We get this down, of course, incredibly early on turn 2 if we need to. And maybe on turn 3, let's play a Dragon Speaker Shaman. Dragon Souls we cast cost 2 less to cast. So yeah, I mean, in combination with our commander, that's what, 3 less for our dragon spells? That's going to take care of a lot of that generic mana cost, a ton of that generic mana cost, and this can even help, help us cast our commander as well. That in combination with Dragon Lord Servant, of course, can be incredible. Again, obviously, that'd be a -4 for all of dragon spells, definitely taking out pretty much all of that generic mana cost that we would need to. We also have a mana rock that can help us out as well. Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind. Taps for a red, and if it's spent to cast a dragon creature spell, it gains haste until end of turn. So, hey, just a great way. This isn't that efficient of a mana rock, obviously, but it's a great way to give one of our dragons haste, allow it to attack right away. And of course, with our commander itself, that can be a big trigger as well. So yeah, just a big way to essentially swing away with all of our giant dragons, especially the ones that have attack triggers or the ones that can hit incredibly hard. Got another mana rock that can help us out though with Dragon's Horde. This one is great in this deck. 3, it can tap for 1 mana of any color, but also whenever a dragon is battlefield under our control, we get a gold counter on this, so we can tap to remove a gold counter from this to draw a card. This is both, well, just a standard mana rock, essentially 3, for tap for 1, like a manalith, but also a draw engine for us when we need it. And yeah, we're gonna have a lot of dragons come into play. Speaking of having dragons come into play, Ganax Astral Hunter. This is just absolutely gross. Hey, it's a 3/4 flyer. Whenever another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you get a treasure token. You're going to have a lot of dragons enter the battlefield under your control. Again, you've got a lot of ways to reduce the cost of your dragons, including your commander, and now you're getting additional benefit whenever they come into play by getting treasure tokens. Absolutely gross. Ravaz of the Claw, another great dragon for this deck. It's going to tap to add 2 mana of any combination of colors just for dragon spells. Once during each of your turns, you can actually cast a dragon out of your graveyard, which is nice. That dragon will be exiled if it goes away, essentially, but that's fine. So yeah, I mean, hey, it's basically a mana dork dragon that is very good at mana fixing. One that doesn't really fix mana, but one that just fixes a lot of mana problems is Savage Ventmaw. It's a 4/4 dragon. Whenever it attacks, it's going to add, get ready for it, red, 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 green, green, green to your mana pool. 6 mana for an attack. My goodness, that is gross. And of course, you get to, keep them in to the end of the turn. So yeah, utilize it for even more dragons. And you might utilize it for a Timeless Dragon, which is a nice dragon, 5/5 flyer for 5. Cool. But you can also plane cycle it away. So early on, if you do need that land, cool, go do that. Get the dragon in your graveyard. There are ways, like Ravaz, to get it out of your graveyard. Or, yeah, you can eternalize it to get a copy of it, essentially, a 4/4 copy. That's a, dragon zombie, for whatever reason. Anyways, in play as well. So that could be a great one, too. But now that we've talked about ramp, let's talk about, well, smashing our opponents with some giant dragons. And first up, we've got oh, goodness gracious. I just stumbled over the words right there. Dramoka the Eternal. We got there. A 5/5 flying dragon that says whenever a dragon you control attacks, bolster 2. And bolster is not the most popular mechanics. Yeah. But just a reminder, choose a creature with the least toughness, 1 creature you control, put 2 counters on it. Although it's not a popular mechanic, this is an incredible effect and an incredible attack trigger in this deck, because basically, hey, yeah, some of your dragons might be lagging behind a little bit. Let's actually just make them into big threats as well, because when we're attacking with all of our dragons, we're going to bolster to a ton. Again, attack triggers can be great for a deck like this. Speaking of which, hey, call again. Attack trigger as well. Hey, whenever a dragon you control attacks, creature you control +1 with 0 until end of turn. Basically, if you've got 5 dragons in play attacking, that's +5 +0 for all your dragons. They're going to be hitting absurdly hard again. Yet another way to turn our commander, at the very least, into a 2-shot KO. It just needs +1 +0 to do that. And potentially a 1-shot KO as well. Now, if this doesn't do it, this will, though. In combination, Thrax the Butcher is incredible with this deck, in combination with our commander especially. Trample, whenever it attacks, we double the power of each dragon we control until end of turn. Absolutely absurd. Making them hit twice as hard. Absolutely gross. And speaking of gross, let's combine that with Tarka World Render. Hey, whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike until end of turn. On top of that, this is a 6/4 with Flample, so it's going to hit hard itself. But now all of our dragons are going to get double strike when they're attacking. And again, our commander, at the very least, a 2-shot KO. With any other pump effect, our commander is a 1-shot KO. On top of everything else that it can do. And of course, we've got one other dragon to help us out as well with, our power. Flying Double Strike, Terror of Mount Velis, enters the battlefield. Creatures you control gain double strike until end turn. Just a great ETB, a great effect to say, oh, you thought it was only going to be this much combat damage before I swung at you? Now they're going to be quite deadlier. So yeah, again, a lot of ways to make our dragon army incredibly deadly. And speaking of deadly, now let's move on to our next tactic and talk about cards that have a very high value for this deck. Cards that just put in so much work. And the first one I want to bring up is Crucible of Fire. This card is incredible. Dragon creatures you control get +3/+3. This might be one of the best anthems out there for tribes. My goodness, that rate. 4 mana +3/+3. Absolutely absurd. I mean, like, I think Collective Blessings, like, it's a +3/+3, but it's 6 mana, essentially, if that's the right one I'm thinking of. So, yeah, basically a giant cost reduction because, yeah, it's specific to Dragon Tribal, but a massive bump effect to make our dragons hit even harder. We can also make our dragons quite sneaky, too, with Renari, Merchant of Marvels. Cast dragon spells and artifact spells, though they had flash. So, yeah, just flash them in whenever. Your opponents might think they've got, you know, an attack at you, and it's going to be a favorable one, and then all of a sudden you're like, giant dragon in play. Sorry about that. Of course, this works great with ETBs as well, and of course with, you know, any artifacts that we have to get into play as well. This can just actually just be a great attack deterrent for opponents to actually be like, you know what, I'm not going to swing at that player because they got mana up, and they can take their dragons out of their hand and just put them into play whenever they want. Sunscorched Regent, a great dragon to get into play, especially early. It's a 4/3 flyer, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, you get a counter on it, and you gain 1 life. So, this can get massive in absolutely no time. Again, in a game of Commander, a lot of spells are going to be cast. You got 3 opponents. This can get huge and also pad your life total in absolutely no time. Next up, a massive creature, Earthquake Dragon. Here we go. It is 15 mana, but you're never going to pay that. It is a 10/10. It's going to cost X less to cast for the total mana value dragons you control. It has Flample, and by paying 2 and a green, you sacrifice a land and return from your graveyard to your hand. You're going to pay a single green mana basically the vast majority of the time to get this out. Because, yeah, I mean, just even in combination with, like, a couple, like, 2 dragons in play usually, or, like, your commander and, like, 1 other dragon, you're going to be counting for that 14 mana, essentially, right there. So it's just going to cost 1 mana for a 10/10 Flampling dragon that you can get back again and again and again very easily. And then we've got Teneb the Harvester to round out this tactic. Hey, 6/6 flyer, that's nice for 6 mana. On top of that, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can pay 2 and a black. If we do, we get any creature from any graveyard into play under our control. Does not specify our graveyard, so yeah, usually it's going to be our graveyard, right? Because we've got the best creatures, we've got the dragons. But if someone else, say, has something else that's pretty massive, or maybe a dragon too, we can go take that, get out of their graveyard, get into play. So yeah, this is a great combat damage trigger. And typically, we're going to be able to get through on at least 1 opponent, you know, because flying. So there we go. Now, as good as all these cards are, there is one card, in my opinion, that stands above the rest. And that's going to be the Golden Pig of this deck, which, of course, is the #1 card of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Myram Sentinel Worm. This card is disgusting. This dragon is absurd. This is crazy as a commander. It is absurd in the 99 of an Dragon deck. A 6/6 with flying and ward 2. It did not need that ward 2. It definitely did not need that ward 2. What were you thinking, Wizards? For 3, green, blue, red. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary if that dragon is legendary. Hey, you want an extra copy of every single dragon that you have? Great. How about a copy of Ganax the Hunter or Astrald or whatever his name is? Goodness gracious, getting an extra copy of that every single time dragons come into play. You're getting 2 treasure tokens instead of 1 because, yeah, legendary rule does not matter. Maybe an extra copy of your commander. Another 10/10 flyer that reduces the cost of your dragons even further. And hey, let's double up that attack trigger as well. Extra copies of all your dragons, no matter what they are. And there's plenty of them in this deck and plenty of great legendary ones too. Double up every single one of them. Yes, please. Thank you. Myram Sentinel Worm, you are most definitely the Golden Pig of this deck. An incredible card. And yeah, just a really heavy hitter. Next up, though, we are going to be moving on to another tactic with Dragon Advantage. Some dragons that help us out with maybe card advantage and other things. Coralessa Sales Singer. I almost said Stinger. Singer! No, singing, not stinging. 1/4. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Cast dragon spells on the top of your library. Nice. Just being able to know what's on top of your library is already good. You know, being able to say, okay, I'm about to draw this next turn. Cool. That's nice. But also, yeah, being able to cast dragons off the top of your library, that's massive. Basically, second, you know, your library is a second hand essentially at that point because you've got so many dragons in this deck, including Draconic Muralist, a great card. It's just a 4/3 for 4, so not all that great. But when it dies, hey, go search the library for any dragon. You know, go get it right and get in your hand. Great, just tutor up any dragon in your deck. You know, maybe like your Golden Pig, or you know something else. But yeah, probably your Golden Pig. So have fun with that. Dragonlord Ojutai, another great dragon. 5/4 flyer. It's gonna have Hex for as long as it's untapped. So yeah, I mean, just if it's sitting there, cool. But maybe you want to swing with it, and when you do, If it deals counter to a player, look at the top 3 cards of your library. 1 goes into your hand, the rest go to the bottom of your library in any order. So yeah, great way to get some great card selection with that. Runehorn Hellkite. Now this one is cool in play, a 5/5 flying dragon for 6. That might have flown, years and years and years ago. It's still not bad, but yeah, here we go. Pay 5 and a red, exile from your graveyard. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. A great way to replace, maybe you're out of a hand. Hey, let's replace that with a lot of dragons that we can get into play. Speaking of replacing things, hey, when we get something into play, let's replace it with something off the top of our library. Amarith the Lustrous. Whenever a permanent enters the battlefield under control of the top card of your library, if it shares a card type with it, it goes into our hand. So hey, play a land. There's land on top, goes in your hand. Great. Play a dragon. Creature on top, cool, goes into your hand. A lot of additional card advantage. On top of this, just being a 6/6 flyer as well. Immrith Desert Doom, 5/5 flyer. Ward 4 if it's untapped. So kind of like Ojutai there as well. Good protection. It's going to take a lot for your opponents to actually target this. And whenever it deals combat to a player, draw a card. And if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Basically, hey, you're running low on cards there, buddy. Well, regardless, I'm going to draw you a card if you're not. But if you are, let's get back up to 3. So if you're at 0 cards, drawing 3, that's great. Dragon Mage, how about we draw 7? Deals combination to a player, everyone wheels. Everyone discards their hand, draws 7 cards, and we can just be the one to wheel in an even bigger way. When Null Spine Dragon enters the battlefield, discard your hand and draw cards equal to the damage dealt to target opponent this turn. This is a May, so you can choose to do that or not. But yeah, if you deal 20, maybe 30 damage to a player, who doesn't want to draw 30 cards? So yeah, this one, be careful that it doesn't deck you. This one could be a great dragon to really utilize. Now, of course, we've got other ways, more standard ways to, draw down into our deck. Let's start things off with Pull from Tomorrow in the next tactic. Draw X cards, discard a card. Very efficient, very effective. And again, there are certain things that actually want to be in our graveyard, like, that Runehorn Hellkite. So, yeah, we might actually discard a card that we really don't, want in our hand. Painful Truce, another great card as well. Hey, basically, this can be 3 mana, draw 3, lose 3. You do need to use, different mana, different colors, essentially. But yeah, it's basically what you're going to be doing most of the time. Read the Bones, another great one. No specific mana required for this one. Scry 2, draw 2, lose 2. Yeah, that's going to be a great card. And I guess I did say no specific mana. You do need a black mana, but you know what I mean. Painful Truth just is more specific on what it wants. Factor Fiction, great card advantage spell. Reveal the top 5, opponent separates into 2 piles. You pick one, goes in your hand, other goes in your graveyard again. Certain cards want to be in your graveyard. And finally, Distant Melody, a great card for a travel deck, especially one like this that has an absurd amount of dragons. Basically, choose dragon. Draw cards equal to the number of dragons you have. For just 4 mana, this can easily draw you, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards. A lot once you're set up properly. Now, let's talk about getting ourselves really set up properly with some ways to actually protect our dragons, protect our key pieces. Swift Boots is a great one. Hey, Hexproof and Haste, equip 1, what's not to love? And again, with our attack triggers, with something like a Savage Vent Maw, yeah, we get the mana back out of it right away. So yeah, make sure you're keeping that in mind. Thunderbreak Regent. This won't technically protect your things, but it is a great deterrent for your opponents to not target your things. Because whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of spell or ability opponent controls, it's going to deal 3 damage to that player. So basically, hey, you target one of my dragons, Lightning Bolt. Do it again, Lightning Bolt. Again and again and again. Rith Liberated Prime Evil, a fantastic card in a Dragon Tribal deck. Flying Ward 2, great. Other dragons you control have Ward 2. That is massive again. Ward 2 means your opponents can't target them unless they pay 2, and that is actually a good amount of mana to pay. I mean, again, like, will you pay the 2? Will you pay the 2? Smothering Tithe, we've all heard that so many times. And yeah, it's really difficult to justify paying the 2 a lot. It's really sad. Anyways, here we go. Sapphire Dragon, a great card for this deck as well. It can be just a 5/6 dragon with flying, and whenever it attacks, we scry 2 or blocks, which is nice. Or, I mean, we're probably going to use this first as an adventure, counter target non-creature spell for 3 mana. So this is a dragon that we can actually utilize to protect our things as well. So this can be great in both scenarios. Next up, though, let's move on to some ways, well, a category that I'm calling Burninate. Let's burn some things. So, Vengeful Ancestor, burn your opponents. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, goad target creature. So, we can burn down a creature as well, I guess. Say, hey, that creature that you don't want to attack? Well, it's forced to attack. It's got to attack someone other than me. That's nice. And on top of that, whenever a goaded creature attacks, deals 1 damage to its controller, which works great in combination with Furkrag, Cunning Instigator. Hey, whenever one of our dragons that you control attack an opponent, goad target creature the player controls. Basically, yeah, let's spread our dragons out. Let's, attack some different players. Let's go to a lot of creatures. And, yeah, obviously that pairs well with the Vengeful Ancestor. On top of that, pairs well with itself. Whenever a creature was combinated to one of your opponents and that creature had to attack this combat, you get a counter on this creature and you draw a card. So this can become a massive threat in absolutely no time, and you can draw an absurd amount of cards with this. Next up, oh my goodness, this is a brutal card. Ojutai, Soul of Winter. Hey, you know those, like, whenever a dragon attacks effects, this one's very brutal as well. Whenever you have a dragon attack, essentially tap target non-land permanent opponent controls. It doesn't untap target controller's decks on tap step. This can just tap things down, well, basically indefinitely. With the amount of dragons you have in play, you're just, like, oh, swing again with 8 dragons. Okay, tap those things down. Okay, next turn, swing with even more dragons. Tap all those things down again. Yeah, it's going to be really hard for your opponents to ever recover once you are set, once you have this in play. Good luck to them. And yeah, if they're dependent on mana rocks, well, you can kind of shut down their mana supply with that too. Sword Coast Serpent, another somewhat flexible card as well. Adventure Side is bounce our creature back to its owner's hand. You can utilize this, for maybe one of your own ETBs if you need to, or, to protect something. Or, yeah, bounce something of your opponents as well. And if you want to get this in play, it can't be blocked as long as you cast a on-creature spell this turn. So if you do that, cool, it's unblockable, which is just fantastic. Now, next category, though, is going to be Burninate more. Because, yeah, we're not done with Burninating yet with our dragons. Because, of course, we've got Lozan Dragon's Legacy. 4/2 flyer. Whenever you cast an adventure spell, which we've talked about a couple so far, or a dragon spell, this can deal damage equal to that spell's mana value to a target that isn't a commander. That is specific, and I'm not sure exactly why it is that way, but it is that way, sure. So take out basically anything but your opponent's commanders. And yeah, when you're casting something like the Ur Dragon, which has a massive mana cost, you're going to be taking things out quite easily. Wasataro, Nekoro Queen, a great card as well. 5/4 Flampling Cat Dragon, because that's the thing. When it goes countered to a player, that player sacrifices a creature. If they don't, you get a 3/3 Flying Dragon, Cat Dragon. How adorable! Okagachi, Vengeful Kami. This is just a giant do not mess with me on the battlefield. 6/6 Flample. When it goes countered to a player, if that player attacked you during their last turn, exile target not only from the player controls. If you attack me, if you come at me, your things are gone. Do not do it. Okagachi is coming through. And I'll also smack you with all my other dragons too. Steel Hellkite, another great card for this deck. Yeah, you can pump it. It's got fire breathing. Kind of a weird one, though. It's like artifact fire breathing. Pay 2 to do that. Regardless, pay X to destroy each non-land permanent mana value. X, whose controller was dealt common damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Active only once each turn. Hey, you got a lot of things over there at 3 mana value. Let's get rid of all of them. Goodbye. And speaking of oh my goodness, just one of the most disgusting cards in this deck. Speaking of getting rid of things, Slumgar the Drifting Death. This might be the best of those effects. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, defending creatures defending player controls, get -1/-1 until end turn. It is so disgusting I can't even get the words out of my mouth. Yeah, hey, what's your greatest toughness among your creatures? 6? Okay, I'll send 6 dragons your way. Goodbye, army. Yeah, this is just absolutely decimating army after army after army. Your opponents won't keep anything in play. Absolutely gross. Speaking of which, Ryosai, the Falling Star. Hey, if you take this dragon out, it's going to hurt you a ton. It's a 5/5 flying dragon. Whenever it dies, it deals 5 damage to each creature without flying. You have basically all dragons in this deck. Your opponents aren't that lucky, most likely, and this is going to take out, well, all the non-flyers. And all your dragons have flying, and your opponent's creatures might not. So there you go. Next up, we do have some spells, though, in our next tactic that can help Burninate as well. And first up, we've got Earthquake. Speaking of taking out non-flyers, hey, it's going to deal X damage to each creature without flying to each player. Again, this can actually help take out players as well. And of course, yeah, take out basically not our creatures, our opponent's creatures. Moving on, Crush Contraband. What's not to love? Exile an artifact, exile enchantment. Really efficient, really effective. Frontier Siege. Speaking of efficient and effective, this actually can help us out in both ways. Because when it enters the battlefield, we choose cons. If we do, at the beginning of each of our main phases, we had green. This can be great mana ramp for us, essentially. Hey, every single turn, get access to 4 free mana. Or, if we need removal, dragons. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under control, you may have fight target creature you don't control. So hey, we can either take out creatures or get mana ramp, depending on whichever we need for the situation we're in. Pick whichever one when this comes into play. In a similar way, we've got Warstorm Surge. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it's going to deal X damage based on its power, essentially, to any target. So hey, yeah, we've got a bunch of high-power dragons. We're going to take out basically everything, essentially anything, right? Any creatures, planeswalkers, players' faces, we can do that with this. Austere Command, very flexible, very effective. Choose 2, destroy all artifacts, enchantments, small creatures, big creatures, probably going to be taking out the small creatures, and yes, swing them through with our dragons, but this can be very flexible. Speaking of flexible, Aether Gale, hey, 5 mana, bounce 6 non-land permanents, incredible in many situations. And again, maybe there is an ETB that you have as well that you might want to take advantage of on your own. Sure, bounce that. Bounce it back to your hand. Use those 6 picks effectively. or just casting Garrick's Wake. Again, we've got a ton of mana ramp in this deck, and hey, and Garrick's Wake's like, you know what? Let's utilize that. Let's destroy all of our opponent's creatures and planeswalkers. Let's keep yours there, though. So yeah, be able to get your massive army through. Now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, though, let's move quickly on to my one highlighted land, and that is going to be Crucible of the Spirit Dragon. I guess I should mention that there are 37 lands in this deck. There is one that I do want to highlight, though. The others are mostly, mana fixing and ramp and that kind of stuff as well. Typical 5-color stuff. But with this one, let's highlight this one. Crucible of the Spirit Dragon, a great card, a dragon deck. Tap for a colorless, pay 1, tap on a storage counter on this, tap, remove X storage counters from it, add X mana, any combination of spells, special ability to cast dragon spells or activate abilities of dragons. Yeah, that's a great way to store up mana on this land. It can just be a fantastic way to just say, oh, I got extra mana floating around. Cool, storage counter. Cool, storage counter. Eventually, utilizing this in a massive way for a massive dragon spell, and then doing it again if you need to. So yeah, this can just be a great card in a deck like this. But yeah, overall, a very exciting commander. One that many players, well, are very scared of, and for good reason. And yeah, the Air Dragon is a great commander, one that can hit really hard. Again, it is decently expensive at $63.67, but yeah, the rest of the deck is very budget friendly at I think around like $30 or so, right? If my math is right on that. But yeah, make sure if you are interested in this commander, in this deck, check out that deck list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.